Hi everyone, it's Laura and I hope you're all doing really well. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I'm planning to read over the next 3 months. So I normally do quarterly TBRs rather than monthly to give me a bit of flexibility. So if there are any of these books that you find interesting, everything's going to be linked in the description box below and you can read along with some of these if you like. It gives you a bit of a sneak preview of what's going to be coming up on my channel. So there's first 2 books that I don't have but I will talk about now because I will be reading them in the next couple of months. The first of these is Weather by Jenny Offill, which is the pick for my Patreon book club for the next 2 months, so that's April and May. This was picked by my book club patrons and I'll leave a link to my Patreon down below if you'd like to join the book club. I thought we'd pick from some of the women's long list and it was getting a bit close between this and Hamlet at one point, but I will definitely read both of them, but I'm quite glad this one. So this is going to be the next 2 months we're reading this book. And then another book club that I run, which is a feminist orchestra book club that I run with Jean, and I will leave a link to the Goodreads group for that one if you're interested in joining that book club. In May and June we're going to be reading Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore, which is a feminist-y, at least suffragette, blue-stocking-y historical romance. It's about a woman who's the first female student at Oxford University and she teaches a duke a thing or two. That's what it says in the blurb. So that sounds really fun. If you'd like to join our book club of feminist reads, we read again 1 book every 2 months. The link will be in the description box below. Now for the rest of my TBR, I do normally try and roll over books that I don't read. So if I give myself a goal of reading 10 books in 3 months or something, when I get to the end of it, I tend to think, oh well, I'll still try and read that book. Today I thought no, there are some books that I had in my TBR from last time which were non-fiction, which were a little bit more hard-going, perhaps a little bit more challenging, and I don't think that's what I need right now. I need books that I can completely lose myself in, books that I can feel like I'm reading quite quickly as well, I think. Especially if I'm finding it hard to focus on anything. I think feeling like you're really getting through a book quickly can be very helpful to bring you out of a slump. So I've completely thrown all the books that I was going to read away. Not away, I haven't thrown them in the bin, they've just been put aside for now, and I've picked some books that really excite me. The first of these is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh, which was around a couple of years ago and I haven't read yet. Considering this is about a woman who decides to cut herself off from the world completely for a year, I think she basically takes drugs or just knocks herself out and goes to sleep for a year. I thought that might be quite appropriate for right now, but also I've heard so many good things about it and I've not read any Ottessa Moshfegh either, so I think this would be a really good one to try. Next on the list is The Confessions of Franny Langton by Sarah Collins, and this won the Costa Book Award for first novel, and I always think the Costa Book Awards are a really good indicator because they do focus on readability, which is absolutely what I'm looking for right now. In fact, I'm planning on reading this later today. This is going to be my next read. This book starts with the trial of a servant, this young girl, Franny Langton, who is accused of murdering her master and mistress. And it sounds like we go back through her past to understand what might have happened. I think she was brought up on a slave plantation in the Caribbean, comes to the UK. That's what I'm getting from the blurb, so it sounds very interesting. And I'm really loving historical fiction at the moment as well. I think that's helping with the taking you out of the current situation vibe. So I actually have a couple more historical fiction books in this list. And one of these is Viper Wine by Hermione Eyre, which I have had for a million years and still haven't read. And I think this again is something that books come in waves, don't they? And people talk about them a lot and you get very excited and then they seem to kind of disappear. That's what happened with this book. And this is about a woman in the 18th century, I believe, or 17th century London. And she's trying to find an elixir of youth, but her husband is also a time traveller. You can see on the front she's got like an iPhone. So it sounds like the kind of book that can't really be explained from the blurb. I think I'm just going to have to read it because it sounds very bizarre, but I'm sure I've heard lots of interesting things about it. And the other one is Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield, which I did buy recently, and this is about the river is the River Thames, I believe, and on the blurb it just says it opens with an old inn. Somebody comes into this inn with the body of a dead girl who has drowned, and then hours later she seems to just come back to life, and that's it. That's just like the tagline for the beginning of the book, and it's to whom does this little girl belong? Is it a miracle? Is it magic? And I've not read any Diane Setterfield before, but for some reason this book just gives me big Essex Serpent vibes. I don't know if that's fair. I'll find out after I've read it. I also do have a couple of non-fictions on this list, but they're more like biographies or autobiographies, which I think I'm kind of in the mood for. Both of these were shortlisted for the Rathbones Folio Award, which is why I have them. And the first one is On Chapel Beach by Laura Cummings. And this is a biography of her mother, who, when she was 5 years old, went missing, was kidnapped, and then was returned, and has no memory of being kidnapped. And this is the story of her trying to piece it all together and uncover the mystery of her family. So very intrigued by that. And the other non-fiction I have is The Guest House for Young Widows by Azada Maveni. And this is about the young women who went out to Syria to join ISIS. So we're young girls who've come from all different countries, and what encouraged them to join up and go over to Syria. And that just sounds very fascinating. It sounds like there's going to be lots of different voices in this book, and they all came from very different backgrounds but still came to this sort of fascinating, sort of horrifying conclusion that they should go and join ISIS. I lied actually, there is one book on this list which has been on my TBR before, but I think it's the kind of book that I really want to read right now, and that's The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Erin Morgenstern wrote The Night Circus, which I actually, in hindsight, wasn't that impressed by. I didn't think, oh, that was an amazing book, but as I was reading it, I really enjoyed it and I really got sucked into the world, and I think that's the kind of reading experience I want. So I've heard very mixed things about this book. It's about a young man who loves reading, I think, goes into a library and finds a very old book, but the story in it is the story of his own life, so it's intriguing, a bit magical, but it sounds like people aren't sure whether they love it or not, which I think was also some of the reviews I saw of The Night Circus. So I'm going into this with a bit of a weird expectation, which is that I don't actually expect it to be that good, but I expect to enjoy the experience. Another book which I was so excited to read when I first got it and then chucked it under my bed and forgot all about it was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, and I've not read Celeste Ng's other books either, so this will be my first introduction to her. This is about a feud between two families, I think, when one of the families decides to try and adopt a Chinese American child, and I don't know, about the secrets and lies and suspicions that emanate from this situation. I've also added onto this list Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy, because my friend Kate lent it to me, and I don't think this is going to be like a really quick read exactly, but I am kind of in the mood for a classic, because again, that is just so escapist, and I feel like when I read Far from the Madding Crowd a couple of years ago, I felt really able to get lost in the world, because he just builds such an intricate like tapestry, I guess, of all the different people and the locations, and you feel like it's very rich and real. So I'm hoping that it's going to be the same. And I know a bit of this story because I think I've watched a bit of an adaptation, and I'm aware a little bit of the characters, but not really well. So I'm looking forward to reading it. Those are the main books on my TBR, but also next weekend over Easter, I want to try and do my own sort of little readathon, so I will be vlogging it. But what I've never done is try and like read a lot of books, like do a 24-hour readathon or anything like that. So what I thought I'd do is try and read like as many books as I can over the Easter weekend. I'm going to try and limit it to like 48 hours maybe, and I have got a pile of lots of short books, so I've given myself a chance. But these are all books I've had for a long while, most of them, and just haven't ever read. So I thought this was a really nice excuse, because I've picked them up because of their length, and I'm going to try and read as many as possible. But these aren't like official TBR books, because I doubt I'll read all of them. This is just like a sneak peek for you if you can read what ones they are. But that's what I'm going to try and do. So I'm really looking forward to that, because I've never really gamified my reading before. I think I've only ever forced myself to read books if I'm reading them for a shortlist prize or something, like I have to get a certain number of books read before they announce the winner. But I've never like really tried to challenge myself in this kind of way. So that will be fun. Let me know if you've read any of these books. I would really love to know the ones that you enjoyed or the ones you didn't enjoy. That's also very useful information. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.